Imagine you are standing in a crowded room, perhaps at a high-stakes cocktail party or a hushed scientific conference. You are surrounded by the hum of voices, the clinking of glasses, and the weight of your shoes pressing against the floor. You feel the warmth of the lighting on your skin. Now, imagine that in a single, silent heartbeat, all of that vanishes. Not because the room disappeared, but because you did. Or rather, the part of you that experiences the room did. Without that internal flicker of light we call consciousness, the universe continues to exist, but for you, it is as if it never was. You have become a zombie, a biological machine with no one home behind the eyes. This is the great paradox of our existence. Consciousness is the single most important aspect of our lives because it is the prerequisite for anything else to matter at all. Whether you care about the deep mysteries of quantum physics, the structure of a symphony, or the simple taste of a cold beer, none of it has value if you are in a coma. And yet, for centuries, this very foundation of reality has been treated as a ghost in the machine, an embarrassing secret that science and philosophy were too afraid to touch. Why has there been such a curious hostility toward the study of our own awareness? If you look at the landscape of intellectual history, you find two warring factions that, despite their hatred for one another, share a single paralyzing assumption. On one side, you have the religious dualists. They argue that consciousness is spiritual, a property of the soul that exists outside the physical world. To them, the mind is a divine spark that cannot be measured by a ruler or seen under a microscope. On the other side, you have the heavy-duty scientific materialists. They claim to be the enemies of the dualists, but they accept the exact same premise, that consciousness is not part of the physical world. Because they cannot find it in a test tube, they conclude that it must not exist at all, or that it is merely a computer program or some other secondary illusion. This standoff has left us in a state of intellectual paralysis, where the most vital part of our human experience is dismissed as either too holy or too fake to be studied. To understand why this is a mistake, we have to look at the evolutionary engine that built us. Why did our ancestors need consciousness to survive? Think of the brain as an incredibly complex biological processor. In the harsh environments of our evolutionary past, a creature that could not only react to stimuli, but could also create a unified, subjective field of experience, had a massive advantage. Consciousness allows for a high level of integration. Instead of having one system for processing light, another for sound, and another for touch, all of these streams are woven into a single, seamless narrative. This unified field allows for rapid, complex decision-making. It allows us to plan for a future that does not yet exist, and to reflect on a past that is gone. Neurologists see this as a system feature of the brain, just as liquidity is a feature of water that arises from the behavior of molecules without being a separate substance from those molecules. Consciousness is a higher-level feature of the neurobiological processes in the brain. It is not an extra juice squirted out by the neurons. It is the state the system is in. Consider the mundane example of your morning routine. You wake up from a dreamless sleep, and suddenly, the world rushes back in. This transition from unconsciousness to consciousness is a biological shift as real as the transition from a solid to a liquid. You decide to reach for your coffee cup, and your arm moves. This seems simple, but it is a miracle of biological engineering. At a neurological level, your conscious desire to drink triggers a sequence of neuron firings. These signals travel down your motor cortex, leading to the secretion of acetylcholine at the end plates of your motor neurons. This chemical trigger opens ion channels, causing your muscles to contract and your arm to rise. The mental event and the physical event are not two different things happening in two different worlds. They are one and the same event described at different levels. When a trillion-dollar tech giant designs an interface to grab your attention, they are hacking into this exact biological system, using colors, sounds, and timing to manipulate the very chemical gates that govern your subjective experience. However, many brilliant minds have fallen into the trap of believing that because consciousness is subjective, it cannot be studied objectively. This is a linguistic trick that has caused centuries of confusion. We must distinguish between the mode of existence of a thing and the mode of truth of our claims about it. For example, if I say I have a pain in my knee, that pain is subjective in its mode of existence. It only exists because I am experiencing it. But the statement that I am in pain can be an objectively true medical fact. Science is about making objective claims about reality, but that reality can include subjective phenomena. When we study the way a historical empire used public spectacles to create a sense of shared identity, we are studying the objective results of subjective conscious states. To say that consciousness is an illusion because science is objective is like saying that because a sunset is explained by the rotation of the Earth, the beauty of the colors we see does not exist. The illusion of the sunset is a description of the celestial mechanics, but the conscious experience of the light is the very data point we are trying to explain. Imagine you are a researcher who is told that your interest in the mind is a career killer. For decades, the prevailing wisdom was that you should get tenure first before you ever mention the word consciousness. This is because the world was under the spell of behaviorism, a school of thought that argued that only observable behavior mattered. But behaviorism is refuted the moment you think about it. There is a fundamental difference between the behavior of crying and the internal feeling of sorrow. You can have one without the other. If you believe that your mental states are identical to your behavior, you are ignoring the most obvious fact of your life, that you have an inner world. This inner world is not a computer program. A computer functions through symbol manipulation, using syntax and binary code. But humans have semantics. We have meaning. A computer can process the zeros and ones of a digital image of a rose, but it does not know the scent of the flower or the prick of the thorn. Computation is often observer-relative. It only becomes math or language because a conscious mind interprets it as such. What if we stopped treating the mind as a mystery outside of nature and started treating it as a biological phenomenon like photosynthesis or digestion? Once you accept that consciousness is a natural part of our biology, the traditional mind-body problem evaporates. We no longer have to wonder how a spirit moves a body or how a machine can have a soul. We simply see a complex system functioning at multiple levels of description. This realization has massive implications for how we build the future. We often hear about the disappointment of robotics, the fact that even our most advanced machines feel hollow. This is because we do not yet know how to build a unified conscious field into a machine. We can build a robot that can move a hand, but we cannot yet build a robot that wants to move its hand for a reason it feels. As we look at the high stakes of our modern world, from the way social media algorithms shape our perceptions, to the way political movements harness our deepest fears, we see the power of consciousness in action. Our consciousness creates an observer-independent reality of money, property, and government. These things only exist because we collectively believe they do, and that belief is a state of consciousness. If we all stopped being conscious tomorrow, the buildings of a university would still stand, but the university itself would cease to exist. Money would just be paper or digital bits with no value. This is the incredible creative power of the human mind. It builds the structures of our society out of the raw material of subjective experience. There are times, of course, when these biases and biological shortcuts backfire. We can be deceived by optical illusions, or more dangerously, by cognitive illusions that lead us to make poor decisions in our personal lives or our national policies. But the fact that our consciousness can be misled does not mean it is not real. It means we must be even more diligent in understanding its mechanics. You cannot doubt the existence of your own consciousness. Even if you are a brain in a vat or living in a digital simulation, the fact that you are experiencing that simulation proves that consciousness is occurring. As a famous thinker once noted, you can doubt everything else, but you cannot doubt that you are currently doubting. I invite you now to perform an audit of your own brain. As you go through the rest of your day, pay attention to the transition between states. Notice the moment you drift off into a daydream and then snap back to the task at hand. Observe the way a conscious decision leads to a physical action, like picking up a pen or turning a key. Recognize that every joy, every heartbreak, and every scientific discovery you have ever known has happened within the theater of your conscious mind. This is not a mystical secret. It is a biological fact, as grounded in reality as the cells in your skin or the blood in your veins. We are standing on the threshold of a new era where we can finally study the engine of our own awareness without shame or hesitation. If you want to understand the hidden architecture of the human experience and how it shapes everything from our daily habits to the fate of civilizations, follow this series for more deep dives into the mechanics of the mind. The mystery is not whether we are conscious, but how we can use that consciousness to build a more objective understanding of our subjective world.